Veronica Kadogo Babirye, NRM's Mary Aramujenyi, NRM's Paul Mwasa Musamali, and NRM's Stephen Odong George, and still NRM's Rosa Cole. Details of what happened yesterday is in today's Daily Monitor. The Daily Monitor also brings you what it will cost to bury the President and members of Parliament. The draft policy, now before Cabinet awaiting approval, is aimed to, among others, harmonize rules and laws on state and official burials and streamline coordination, financing and eligibility criteria. The President and former President will have to they will spend 500 million on their burial. Speaker of Parliament, Deputy Chief Justice, First Lady and others, they will spend 300 million shillings will be spent on their burial. 240 million will be spent on ministers, leaders of opposition and members of Parliament, and 200 million will also be spent on officers stipulated in the Specified Officers Act 1999. 200 million still will be spent on the burial of extraordinary persons designated by the President, recognized as cultural leaders, and then 10 million will be spent on each citizen killed in mass disasters, war and accidents. It's a draft policy now that has been tabled before Cabinet. The Daily Monitor brings you the details. Moving on, Sebunjo on his musical drama, it's in Scoop on the Daily Monitor. And also the crude oil pipeline. Students join protests over EU motion on oil pipeline. Then also in today's Daily Monitor, there are job opportunities at World Food Programme, NMG, UNOC, Total, AFNet, Save the Children, among others. Get yourself a copy of today's Daily Monitor. And also in the Daily Monitor, they bring you how an Ebola patient escaped from the isolation center. And also here is cheap local cooking oil in today's Daily Monitor. Moving on to the New Vision, banks decline to extend loan restructuring deadline. 12,000 schools on sale over loans. It's in today's New Vision. Get yourself a copy and see which schools are in today's on sale over loans. Many of them is due to the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic that brought about a lockdown of 2 years in our country and the world at large. Also, Gulu University admission list is out. They bring you the names and the courses of the people who are to be admitted in the Gulu University. On development, government lauds China for supporting projects. And also Museveni advises Emyoga beneficiaries on saving. It's in today's New Vision. The New Vision also brings you Yala elected representatives, mostly from NRM, and they bring you the different votes that they have gotten as they as they contested for the Yala member of Parliament. Right now, allow me to take you straight into today's international news update. Sweden has found a new leak in a major undersea pipeline carrying Russian natural gas to the EU, making it the fourth discovered this week. Denmark and Sweden reported gas leaks in the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines earlier this week. NATO said the incidents were the results of deliberate, reckless and irresponsible acts of sabotage. Russia dismissed suggestions that it had attacked its own pipelines as predictable and stupid. Instead, the Russian Foreign Ministry said the blasts had occurred in zones controlled by American intelligence. The German ambassador to the UK, Miguel Berger, told the press it was clear that a non-state actor could not have been behind the incidents. In other words, a country must have been responsible. Moving on, the U.S. has struck a partnership agreement with Pacific Island nations and concern in Washington over growing Chinese influence. It also announced $810 million in financial support and said it would recognize Niue and Cook Islands as sovereign states. 14 nations signed the deal, including Solomon Islands, after reports said its leader would not sign. The region has strategic importance as the gateway to Asia from Pacific. Its location and its need for assistance, particularly to help it deal with the impact of climate change, has triggered a battle for influence, with China keen on playing a prominent role. And in Asia, North Korea carried out another banned missile test just hours after a visit by U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, according to South Korea's military. 2 short-range ballistic missiles were fired into the sea off the northeast coast, it said, in the third breach of the UN sanctions this week. It follows a visit by Ms. Harris to the demilitarized zone dividing the Koreas. This has been a record year for missile tests in North Korea, and the latest launches are timed to send the message. They come as the U.S. and South Korea held joint naval drills this week around the Korean Peninsula. And in the United States, the country will never recognize Russia's attempt to annex territory in Ukraine, according to President Joe Biden. He was speaking ahead of a speech on today from Vladimir Putin, who is expected to declare that 4 Ukrainian regions are joining Russia. The Kremlin says Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia and Kherson voted to join Russia in recent referendums, but Ukraine and the West have dismissed the votes as a sham. The U.S. will impose new sanctions on Russia as a result of the annexation. Yesterday, the Russian president signed 2 decrees recognizing Zaporizhia and Kherson as independent territories, paving the way for them to be annexed. And in Europe, Australia has said it will end mandatory COVID isolation requirements from next month. Currently, anyone who tests positive to the virus must isolate for 5 days, but that will end from 14th of October. At times nicknamed Fortress Australia, the country has had some of the strictest restrictions in the world since the pandemic began. Australia's Chief Medical Officer Paul Kelly said the emergency phase of its response was probably over. But Professor Kelly said the decision does not in any way suggest the pandemic is finished. And moving on, the Prime Minister will meet the head of Britain's independent forecaster on today after days of market turmoil. In an unusual move, Liz Truss and Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng will meet the chairman of the Office of Budget Responsibility to discuss the fallout after Friday's mini-budget. The watchdog offered to prepare a draft forecast in time for the mini-budget, but it was not taken up. A group of members of Parliament has called for the forecast to be released immediately. The Treasury Select Committee said the lack of this forecast before last Friday's mini-budget had in some parts driven the lack of confidence in the markets. And finally, new coins featuring the portrait of King Charles have been revealed, with a 50p carrying his image entering general circulation within weeks. The press was given a first glimpse of the 50p and commemorative £5 crown, which include an image of the king by British sculptor Martin Jennings. The coins follow centuries of tradition, with the monarch now facing left, the opposite way to his predecessor. As with previous British kings, and unlike the Queen, he wears no crown. King Charles personally approved the effigy and was understood to be pleased with the likeness. The coins will be sold to collectors by the Royal Mint from early next week. The 50p coin will be available for general use well before the end of the year, and distributed according to demand by banks, building societies and post offices. They will co-circulate with coins featuring the late Queen, so those 27 billion coins will still be accepted in shops. Well, that brings us to the end of this morning's news update. Thank you so much for watching Channel 44. I remind you of the Karamoja cry. We have sent food relief to the people of Karamoja. We have sent help to the people of Karamoja, and currently the Robert Kayanja Ministries team is there serving and helping the people of Karamoja to plant, to plow, and to produce. Please join us once again, as the need is still great, for we need to send seedlings and more equipment up there in the northeastern region so that the people can be saved from the hunger situation there. Send your seed on the numbers that will be available during the services, or you can bring them on at the Miracle Center Cathedral. We'll be having services, and there is a powerful overnight tonight that you do not want to miss. God bless you. Enjoy your morning. The pastors are coming on with the Pastors Now program. Good morning.